In a quiet corner of the world, far beyond the bustle of cities and the ticking of clocks, there was a forest that never rushed. The trees of the whispering forest stood tall and wide, their leaves the color of every gentle thing, soft green like new ferns, honey gold like afternoon sun, and silver blue like mist curling over mossy stones. The air always carried a hush, not of silence, but of listening. For this forest, unlike any other, had its own voice. A low, leafy murmur that drifted through the canopies and curled around the trunks like a lullaby too old to forget. At the heart of this forest stood 4 trees older than time itself. They weren't taller or grander than the others, but they felt different, more rooted, more still, more aware. These were the season trees, and each one held within its bark the secret rhythm of a season. To the north stood the winter tree, its bark etched with frost glass patterns even in the heat of midsummer. It whispered in short, crisp breaths, as though remembering snowfall. To the east grew the spring tree, fragrant and fresh, always budding, always humming with the joy of beginnings. Its roots were woven with tiny blooms that never quite closed. To the south was the summer tree, wide-armed and radiant, glowing with golden warmth that even birds dared not nest in too long. It was always singing, always dreaming of sunlight. And to the west, shrouded in russet shadow and sleepy golden light, stood the autumn tree. Its branches draped down like curtains, heavy with leaves that whispered slow stories. Its bark was the color of cinnamon and dusk, and at its center, like all the others, it held a heart-shaped crystal, amber, warm, and filled with memory. These 4 trees kept balance over the land of Ilarion, turning the seasons not with wind or temperature, but through ancient songs carried on a network of hidden roots, known only as the wind root. Every tree, every leaf, every patch of moss was part of this hush-bound harmony, and the people of Ilarion, foxes and owls, badgers and deer, frogs and even hedgehogs, knew the rhythm. They planted their food by the leaves turning. They listened to the air for when to gather, when to rest, when to roam. Their lives flowed with the forest's whisper, but something was changing. It began with a pause, a small, unsettling quiet that settled between breezes like a breath not taken. Then, a hush in the wind root. The whispering slowed. The forest, it seemed, was waiting for something that did not come. The days grew cooler, but the leaves did not fall. The wind blew softer, but it carried no golden scent. The animals looked to the west, toward the autumn tree, and waited and waited. But the autumn tree remained still. Not dead. No, its bark still pulsed gently with light. But it no longer sang, no longer whispered. Its crystal heart was dim, as though caught mid-dream and unable to wake. The other season trees sent quiet pulses through the wind root, calling to it. They asked, "Where are you? Why do you sleep? Is it not your time?" But there came no answer. And so the forest began to worry in the way forests do, slowly, with curling leaves and unsure roots. Something had been forgotten, or lost, or broken. And in the edge of a small glade near the forest's northern border, a young fox named Mira stood very still, ears tilted to the trees, eyes closed, listening. The leaves around her were sighing, and if one listened very closely, beneath the rustle, beneath the hush, beneath even the wind's touch, one could just make out a whisper, a question, a plea. Do they still remember? Mira was not the kind of fox who liked to hurry. She liked to walk slowly, with her tail low and her ears perked just so. She had a careful way about her, as though she were always listening for a secret she hadn't yet heard. Her fur was the soft orange of early morning light, Her paws were always just a bit dusty from wandering, and around her neck hung a little satchel made of birch bark, sewn together with pine thread. Inside it, tiny flasks of dew water, bits of crystal, pressed leaves, and folded pages filled with sketches and scribbles and stories she collected on her walks. Mira was a collector of quiet things. She lived alone in a tidy den at the base of a stone hill, its doorway framed by ferns and foxglove. Her shelves were lined with jars labeled in her own careful handwriting: moth songs, seed glimmers, ghost pollen, and early thunder. Most creatures in the forest didn't know what any of those things were, but Mira did, and that was enough. She listened. She remembered. That was her way. So when the wind changed one morning and the leaves began to sigh, not rustle, not flutter, not fall, but sigh, Mira knew it meant something was wrong. She stood just outside her den, tail curled around her paws, nose lifted slightly to the breeze. Her ears twitched. Around her, the trees leaned in close, as if trying to whisper something only she could hear. And she did hear it, softly, like a story told through a closed door. The autumn tree is asleep. Her fur prickled. She turned slowly, her eyes drifting toward the west, where the sky was brushed with a sleepy golden haze. The autumn tree. It was its season now. It should be singing. The air should be filled with that cozy rustle of turning leaves, with the scent of drying hay and the long, low songs of migrating birds. But the forest paused. She stepped carefully between patches of moss and mushroom, padding toward the large flat stone near her den that served as her thinking spot. She sat, looked up, listened again, and the leaves repeated just once more. The autumn tree is asleep. Mira blinked slowly, the way foxes do when they are not frightened, but deeply considering something. A quiet flutter of wings pulled her attention upward. Perched on a crooked branch was a round, grayish owl, blinking down at her with enormous amber eyes. He wore a knitted scarf that trailed like a tail behind him, one end caught in a cobweb, the other still trailing a leaf or two from last week's storm. "Thistle," Mira said, tilting her head slightly. "You heard it too, didn't you?" The owl blinked. "Mm-hmm." He puffed his feathers nervously. "Leaves don't usually sigh, do they?" "Not unless they're worried," Mira replied. Thistle fluttered down and landed beside her, careful not to disturb a nearby mushroom circle. "What does it mean, do you think?" Mira was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her satchel and pulled out a tiny notebook. She flipped through pages filled with drawings of pine cones, faded petals, and runes written in squirrel ink. She paused at a page with a soft amber smudge across it, one she'd made after visiting the autumn tree last year. "Every season begins with the trees," she murmured. "The four-season trees. When one of them sleeps too long, the season loses its place." Thistle leaned in. "So autumn is missing?" Mira nodded. "Or waiting? Or both?" Thistle looked very small suddenly, his feathers rumpled with worry. "What happens if the tree doesn't wake up?" Mira didn't answer right away. Instead, she closed her notebook, tucked it back in her satchel, and stood. Her tail swished once, thoughtfully. "I think we should go and find out." Thistle flapped his wings in a flutter of panic. "Find the autumn tree? You mean go west? All the way to the Grove of Seasons?" Mira nodded calmly. "Yes, something is wrong, and the forest is whispering to me. I think it wants someone to listen properly. But the grove is, well, it's far," Thistle stammered, "and the hollow path is overgrown, and the sleep moss is thick this year, and we don't even know the way, not really." "I have a map," Mira said. "You always have a map," Thistle muttered. "It's your answer to everything. And it usually works. Mira replied gently with a smile. Besides, we won't go fast, just a bit each day. Carefully, quietly. The forest will help if we let it. The owl stared at her a long while, feathers ruffling in the morning breeze. Then he gave a soft, resigned hoot. Well, I am the only one who can read moonlight markings. Mira's smile widened. That's exactly why I asked you. He shook out his wings. Give me 5 minutes to pack some moss biscuits and a thermos of starlight tea, and maybe a blanket. I'll meet you at Elder Pine's roots, Mira said. He might have news. Thistle blinked. We're talking to Elder Pine, too? We're going on a journey, Mira said with a warm little shrug, already turning toward the deeper woods. It's always polite to begin with wisdom. And with that, she padded into the trees, the whispers wrapping around her like threads of silk. Her paws made no sound on the mossy earth. Her ears twitched gently as the forest seemed to open before her. Behind her, Thistle flapped off toward his hollow, muttering about brave foxes and foolish owls, and how someone always forgot snacks on important adventures. But beneath it all, beneath his fluttering and Mira's soft steps, the forest was listening, and somewhere, deep beneath the roots, something ancient stirred. Elder Pine stood in the quietest part of the forest. He was older than the stones, older than the river, and maybe, just maybe, older than the season trees themselves. No one was quite sure. He didn't talk about his age, but he did talk about other things. Soil dreams, star shadows, and the way roots hum when no one's watching. His bark was thick and furrowed, with long tendrils of moss draped over his branches like a wizard's cloak. Acorns nestled in the folds of his roots, and mushrooms in every shade of cream and rust circled his base like little scholars taking notes. Mira approached slowly, her paws sinking into the rich forest floor. Thistle glided in behind her, wobbling just a little as he landed on a low branch. The air near Elder Pine was different. He didn't speak with words, at least not aloud. But those who knew how to listen could feel his thoughts in the air, like echoes caught in soft bark and bark breath. Mira bowed slightly, tail curled neatly. Elder Pine, she said softly, the forest is restless. A long pause. Then a breeze stirred the leaves overhead. The moss trembled. A low vibration passed through the ground, like a long sigh that began somewhere deep and old. You are not wrong, came the response. Thought, not sound, yet clear. The windroot has stilled near the west. The autumn tree does not answer. Thistle fluffed up. Do you know why? Another pause. Then, no. The roots do not lie, but they do forget. You will need to remind them. Mira blinked. Remind the roots? The trees remember in a different way than we do, Elder Pine said. They listen to memory that is shared, not stored. And something has been forgotten, not by you, perhaps, but by many. Thistle shifted on the branch. How do we find something that's been forgotten by everyone? Mira tilted her head. With stories, she whispered. Elder Pine rustled. Yes, with stories, with echoes, with the map. From within a fold of his trunk, a thin branch slowly unfurled, creaking gently as it reached toward them. In its grasp was a long sheet of bark, smooth, pale, and veined like a leaf. It shimmered faintly in the dappled light. Mira stepped forward and took it carefully. The map wasn't a map in the usual sense. There were no roads, no labels, no compass. Instead, it was covered in fine, curling lines, like rootwork or spider silk, glowing ever so faintly in silver-green ink. Thistle leaned closer. What is this? The map of whispers, Elder Pine said. It doesn't show where to go. It shows where the forest is remembering. Mira's eyes flicked across the delicate paths. Some lines pulsed gently. Others flickered or faded. These are the old paths, she murmured. Ones I've never seen. Ones that haven't been walked in ages. Elder Pine replied, They will guide you only if you walk quietly, listen deeply, and disturb little. The forest will open for those who walk with care. Thistle swallowed audibly. Do you mean the sleep moss? Mira glanced at him. What's sleep moss? Thistle puffed his feathers. Only the most sensitive, sneezy, and easily offended moss in the whole forest. If you step on it too hard, it sulks. If you speak too loudly, it hisses. If you breathe the wrong way, it curls up and blocks the path. Elder Pine's thoughts chuckled. The sleep moss remembers the old songs. Walk softly, sing gently, speak kindly. You will be fine. Mira traced a paw along the edge of the map. And where does it lead us? To the river of reflections, came the answer. There you will see what you carry within you. That must come before the grove of echoes. Mira nodded slowly. Thistle looked unconvinced. Can't we just fly over the moss? Mira raised a brow. And miss the part where we remember what we've forgotten? The owl slumped. Didn't think so. She rolled the map gently and tucked it into a long side pocket of her satchel. Then she bowed once more to Elder Pine, her voice soft with gratitude. Thank you for trusting us. You have the patience of still water, Elder Pine said, and the kindness of slow light. That is enough. A breeze rustled through his branches, sending a few golden leaves drifting down. One landed on Mara's back, another on Thistle's beak. The owl sneezed. As they turned to go, the map shimmered faintly, showing a path that curved around a dry creek bed and under a twisted arch of stone. Mira stepped into the shade of the deeper trees, paws light, thoughts calm. Thistle followed close behind, grumbling only a little about moss and mystery. And behind them, Elder Pine grew still again, folding his thoughts back into his rings and roots, listening once more to the slow, quiet shift of the forest's breath. The whispering forest grew quieter the farther west Mira and Thistle traveled. The trees leaned closer together here, their trunks marked with tiny silver runes, signs left by deer priests long ago, who spoke to the roots in dream tongue. Light came in filtered waves through the leaves, shifting from gold to blue to green again, like sunlight through stained glass. Birds rarely sang here. Instead, the forest hummed. It wasn't loud, just the soft, deep vibration of life, remembering itself. Every leaf seemed to breathe. Every stone looked like it had once been listening. Mira walked carefully, checking the map of whispers every few steps. The lines on the bark shimmered faintly beneath her paw, as if they liked being touched by someone who believed in them. Thistle flew overhead in short glides between low branches, his wings nearly silent. "Did you notice?" he said in a hush, landing beside her. "There haven't been any footsteps here. Not for years, maybe." Mira nodded. "This is a remembering path, not a walking one." They followed the silver-threaded route until it led them into a narrow glade where the trees opened just enough to reveal a river, thin, winding, and glass-smooth. It didn't babble or bubble like most streams. It was silent, as still as polished obsidian, the river of reflections. Mira paused at its edge. The water was so clear it reflected the sky perfectly, though no clouds passed overhead. When she leaned in slightly, she didn't see her face. Not exactly. Instead, she saw herself curled beneath a pile of autumn leaves as a child, her mother tucking a red scarf around her. She saw her father pressing his nose to hers before a story. She saw an old journal, worn thin at the edges, being tucked under her pillow with a note. "For your questions." She blinked, startled, not by the vision, but by the warm ache it left behind. "What did you see?" Thistle asked gently. "Home," she whispered. "But not just home. Moments I'd almost forgotten. The ones that made me. Thistle flapped beside her, uncertain. "Does it always do that?" Mira tilted her head. "I think it shows what's missing, or what matters. Or maybe both." The owl shuffled to the edge, leaned over the water, and peered down. His feathers ruffled. After a long pause, he said, very quietly, "I saw myself, hiding, but not alone. I think I saw you." Mira looked at him. "Do you remember that storm?" he asked. "2 winters ago, you found me inside that hollow log. I'd gotten lost flying back from the Moonstone Cliffs." "I remember," Mira said softly. "You didn't say anything," he went on. "You just waited with me. Gave me a blanket and a story scroll. That's what I saw." Mira's voice was gentle. "Sometimes stories are more warming than fire." The river shimmered as though agreeing. Suddenly, a ripple broke across its surface, silent and slow but deliberate. From the center of the water, a shape began to rise. It wasn't frightening. It was soft, light, and luminous, like dew catching dawn. A spirit. Its form was ever shifting. Sometimes a heron, sometimes a fish, sometimes a swirl of moonlight and petals. When it finally settled, it looked vaguely like a tall, willowy woman with riverweed hair and eyes like quiet pools. She glowed in soft blue and violet hues. "I am Lunale," she said in a voice like dusk. "The river has spoken your names. You carry memory and question, which are the same thing in different clothes." Mira stepped forward, her posture respectful. "We're seeking the autumn tree. It sleeps too deeply. We think it may have been forgotten." Lunale tilted her head. "Not forgotten. Unheard. There is a difference." Thistle blinked. "Can we wake it?" The spirit walked lightly across the surface of the river. Not with noise, not with fire, but perhaps with shared remembering. She reached out one pale hand, and a strand of river mist floated toward Mira, curling into a small, leaf-shaped crystal, clear and warm to the touch. "This is a memory key," she said. "It opens the heart of the Grove of Echoes, where forgotten things go to listen again." Mira accepted it with a slow nod. "Thank you. But beware," Lunale added gently. "Before you can share memory, you must understand what it costs. The Grove will ask something from you in return." "What does it ask?" Mira asked. The spirit shimmered faintly. "Only this, that you leave behind one thing that no longer serves you." Mira and Thistle were silent. Finally, Mira said, "We'll find it. Whatever it is." Lunale smiled faintly. "Then go. The path continues beyond the amber stones. Walk with care." She faded into mist again, and the river stilled as if it had never moved at all. Mara placed the memory key in a velvet pouch inside her satchel, and together, she and Thistle turned toward a new path now appearing in the moss, lined with small, glowing amber stones. The map of whispers pulsed softly in her paw. The journey was changing, not just the forest, but them too. And somewhere, deep within the roots of a dreaming tree, the whispers began to stir once more. The forest changed again as they moved past the river. Where before the trees had stood tall and golden, now they grew shorter, older, closer together, as if huddling for warmth. The air was thicker here, cool and heavy with the scent of lichen and bark. Soft spores drifted lazily through beams of fading light. Even the wind spoke in murmurs. Mira kept the memory key tucked safely against her chest. With each step, she could feel a faint warmth pulsing from it. Steady, slow, like the heartbeat of a sleeping season. Thistle flew in silence above her, pausing now and then to peer at the map of whispers. Its pale bark shimmered more brightly now, and a single line traced ahead of them, one that curved toward a hill of ivy-covered trees where the moss turned darker and thicker. As they rounded a bend in the path, they came upon it, a tree wider than any they had seen. It wasn't tall, not anymore. Its crown had thinned, and its topmost branches had long since been claimed by time. But its trunk was vast, split down the center like a door left slightly ajar. The hollow tree. It leaned slightly to one side, and a tangle of roots spilled from its base like frozen waves. The bark was marked with old symbols, spirals, runes, and faded paw prints from animals that had once passed here on quiet journeys of their own. Mira stepped closer. The air inside the hollow opening was still, cool, waiting. "There's something inside," she whispered. Thistle landed on a nearby branch. Something, listening. Mira reached out and pressed one paw gently against the wood. It gave no resistance, only a soft warmth, as if it recognized her. She stepped into the hollow. It was not dark inside. Instead, a pale golden glow seemed to pulse from the wood itself. The hollow was larger than it appeared from outside, wider, deeper, almost like a library of stillness. All around her, carved into the walls of the tree, were memories. Not written, not painted, but pressed into the wood like imprints. She saw them as flickers, a badger cub placing a stone beside a nest of moss, a squirrel whispering a name before setting down a carved acorn, a stag leaving a glowing feather behind, tears in his eyes. Each had left something behind. Myra touched one gently. It was a pressed flower, dry and pale, held beneath a layer of sap-clear resin. As she touched it, a vision bloomed behind her eyes. A memory not hers. A young vole, singing softly to her mother in a cradle of leaves. A lullaby. A farewell. Then placing the flower into the tree with a trembling paw. Mira stepped back, breath held. "They left their memories here," she said aloud. "The ones that hurt, or mattered too much to keep." Thistle fluttered onto her shoulder, silent. From the far wall of the hollow, a soft light shimmered. A door-shaped knot opened, not outward, but inward, unfolding like the petals of a night flower. Beyond it, a narrow tunnel of tree wood, curling downward. The forgotten path. Mira took a breath and stepped through. The tunnel was warm and quiet, lined with amber sap veins that glowed just enough to light their way. Thistle said nothing, but she could feel his small weight press closer against her shoulder, anchoring her. The path sloped down for a long while, curving gently through layers of root and memory. Mira lost track of time, of space, of direction. But the map glowed softly in her satchel, and she knew they were still being guided. Then suddenly, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. In its center stood a shallow basin carved into the root floor. Inside the basin, a liquid that shimmered like moonlight on a still pond, and beside it, a small plaque etched in curling script. "Before you pass, you must leave what you no longer need. Only then can memory make space for the truth." Mira stared at the basin. "What does it mean?" Thistle asked softly. She was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, she reached into her satchel and drew out a small, folded page, creased at the edges, its ink faded from years of reading. It was the first story she'd ever written, a simple tale about a lost fox who found her way home by following the whispers in the wind. She'd read it again and again through her youth, whenever she'd felt unsure, small or forgotten. It had helped her become who she was. And yet, she looked at it now, and something inside her stirred. Not sadness, not fear, but readiness. She kissed the page once, then gently placed it into the basin. The liquid shimmered, brightened, then stilled. and the path beyond them opened with a soft whisper, roots unfurling like ribbon, moss parting to reveal a doorway lit with amber light. Mira stood taller, lighter. Thistle, teary-eyed but proud, added one small feather to the basin as well. "From the night I got lost," he said, "so I can stop being afraid of that sky." They walked on together, past the basin, through the open roots. Beyond lay the edge of the grove of echoes. They didn't see it yet, but they could feel it. And far away, so far it almost felt like a dream, the autumn tree turned slightly in its sleep and whispered a single word: "Closer."